Hello, I'm Kathy Fox Alfano of Born TV's Primary 22, Why Should We Vote for You? Today I'm welcoming Eric Lesser, Democratic candidate for Lieutenant Governor. Eric, thank you so much for coming down to Bourne, and it was quite a trip.
Oh no, thanks for having me, Kathy. Yeah, left bright and early from Western Mass this morning, but luckily pretty easy with the traffic.
Good. Well, we really like to get to know you better.
Yeah.
First, Eric, tell me, what does a Lieutenant Governor do?
Yeah, well, first, Kathy, thanks for having me, and it's really great to be on Born TV. So a Lieutenant Governor has two constitutional roles. Of course, to serve as acting governor in the governor's absence, and also to chair the Governor's Council, which is the body in state government that confirms all judicial nominations made by the governor, as well as approving all pardons and commutations. But Kathy, the job is also really what you make of it. And really, at the end of the day, the Lieutenant Governor's job is, I think, to help implement the governor's agenda and to help make sure that the governor's vision and policy priorities are a success. And I think I've got a unique set of characteristics and experience that will help me be that right lieutenant for Governor Healey.
Okay, what would you do with the office?
Yeah, well, so thanks. So just a little bit of background on me. I'm a state senator from the greater Springfield area. I live in Longmeadow, about 100 miles west of here. And in the state Senate, I've chaired our Committee on Economic Development, where we've done a lot of work around closing the wait lists at our vocational schools, done a lot of work on investing in municipal infrastructure. I've done a lot of work with my colleagues, Senator Sue Moran and Senator Julian Sear, on investing in and helping support the Cape, especially the year-round economy and housing. I also have some high-level federal experience. I worked for 4 years for President Obama before I was in the state Senate. I worked as the assistant to David Axelrod, about 40 feet from the front door of the Oval Office, and also worked for the President's Council of Economic Advisors. So I think what I would bring to the role is the perspective of someone from Western Mass. We can appreciate this on the Cape. You know, you need that perspective of outside Beacon Hill to help build out a good executive team. That perspective of someone that's worked at the State House on those really high-stakes issues, housing, transportation, climate, and the experience of someone that's got that federal know-how, because we're going to have big questions in front of us over the next 4 years that we're going to need to tackle with our federal partners.
How would you work with Maura Healey?
Yeah.
Do you have the same skills or different skills than she does?
I think we complement each other very well. Governor Healey, or soon to be Governor Healey, I'm certainly going to be doing everything I can to make that happen. We've already worked together for a long number of years on some very high stakes, very important issues. Let me just give you just a couple of examples, Kathy. You know, the opioid crisis. My area in Western Mass, very, very hard hit. Of course, the Cape has been very hard hit as well. Back in 2015, I wrote legislation to set up a bulk purchasing program for Narcan, which is the overdose reversal drug that's saved countless lives across Massachusetts. I worked very closely with Attorney General Healey and her team to get that legislation written, to get it passed into law, and her office has been a key part of helping to implement it. Kathy, that program has helped get thousands of doses of Narcan into the hands of police, EMTs, firefighters, school nurses, including in Bourne, where they've used it. Just another example of how we've worked together, the Student Loan Borrower Bill of Rights. Betsy DeVos tried to stop us, tried to preempt state action on student loan protections. We took that on. Attorney General Healey was suing the federal government while I was working to get legislation passed to set up new protections in Massachusetts. That program is now helping 800,000 student loan borrowers across our state. We worked very closely with Attorney General Healey to get that done, and her office is now implementing a big part of it. So we have the history of working together on really important high-stakes issues. And I also think, Kathy, just to my earlier point, it's important to have that Western Mass perspective, and it's going to be important to have that legislative experience as well. And I think that that'll make us the right team at the State House.
Wonderful. Well, here in Bourne, we have two very concerning environmental issues. We're looking at both Holtec, threatening to dump radioactive water, 1 million gallons, into Cape Cod Bay on our north side, and the possibility of a wastewater outfall right into the Cape Cod Canal, directly across from houses and beaches. What can you do to help stop this environmental disaster?
Well, Kathy, I appreciate you bringing this up. So let me just be unequivocal. I oppose in the strongest possible terms both projects.
Okay.
And as Lieutenant Governor, I would do everything in my power to stop them. Specifically on Holtec, I followed this issue closely. Vinnie DiMacedo, who was the state senator a few years ago, began working on that Pilgrim nuclear decommissioning. I've worked closely with Senator Moran on the issue, as well as Senator Sear. Under no condition should radioactive wastewater be dumped into Cape Cod Bay. I mean, frankly, it's outrageous that we even have to say that out loud.
Agree.
And I know that, and I want to thank Senator Markey, who hosted a hearing on this issue in May that helped shed more light. We need to be crystal clear that that is simply not an option that even can be or should be discussed. And as Lieutenant Governor, I would work with our federal partners. I would, of course, work with the governor, and I would work to coordinate with our state environmental agencies on a plan to make sure that that waste is housed in a safe way and under no circumstance is discharged into Cape Cod Bay. As for the the sewer overflows and the water discharge you mentioned as well, we have plans in the state right now to invest in our water infrastructure, to invest in our wastewater treatment so that we can avoid these types of discharges. And as Lieutenant Governor, I would make that a big priority. We have more than $1 billion remaining in unspent ARPA money, just as an example, Kathy, that we could dedicate to projects like that to make sure that we're taking care of that wastewater in a clean way.
Right. I'm beginning to think that we should have a ban on dumping anything into water, because look at what we've done. You know, haven't we learned over 60 years or whatever? Don't do that.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that we'll get there.
Yeah, I mean, you obviously have beautiful coastal waterways here, and obviously an incredible coastline. In my neck of the woods in Western Mass, I live on the Connecticut River,
Beautiful
which
river.
is an American heritage river that was frankly soiled and almost destroyed by pollution, from industrial uses over more than a century. It's taken 2 generations to get that river back,
But you did.
to a clean place. So this is something I take personally, and we've got to do more on CSO overflows, combined sewer overflows. In the Economic Development Committee, we've worked on packages to, for example, invest in our CSO infrastructure so that that water during storms doesn't get discharged, into waterways and is instead stored and treated. So I agree with you, and there's a lot we can do. That's the thing I just want to get across, is these are fixable issues.
Yes.
If we focus on the politics of it, we focus on the policy, and we make the investments to get it right.
How about the machine gun range at Joint Base? Do you support that?
Yeah. So, I clearly not, because I think it would be pretty loud and pretty disruptive. I've actually spent a lot of time on that base because my dad is retired now, but was a lieutenant colonel in the Massachusetts National Guard. He was a physician for the Guard, and we would spend a lot of time on that base. When he was doing his duties or his rotations there. It's an incredible asset for Cape Cod. We should avoid doing things that are so disruptive to the community and to the neighbors. I have a lot of experience working with military bases. I have one of the largest Air Force Reserve bases in the country, actually located in my Senate district.
Westover?
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah, okay.
Westover, which is located in Chicopee, but also touches Granby and Ludlow, and several other communities in Western Mass. So, I think the name of the game is really coordination and cooperation. And as Lieutenant Governor, I think that's an example of where I can come in, work with the community, work with the base officials. At the end of the day, I think people all want to do the right thing and work on something that that helps protect the neighborhood.
I know that transportation, particularly rail expansion, is one of your key focuses. Here in Bourne, we have split opinions about expanding rail service over the canal into the Cape. Where do you stand on that issue?
So first, you've got to work with local communities on any transportation project, right? Whether it's roads, bridges, of course, mass transit. So you've got to have an inclusive process where concerns and issues are kind of aired out in an open way, and where people's concerns are taken into account. On a high level, what I would say is we need significantly more rail infrastructure in our state, and in particular, we need more passenger rail. And I do think, for example, improving the Cape Flyer service, connecting Bourne and Hyannis to Boston would be a very good thing. Now, we've got to make sure that local communities benefit, right, from those connections. And so that means improving and making sure that we're allowing communities to grow with the increase in values and all the investment that you're going to see as a result. But Kathy, the reason it's important is, First, the traffic is unbearable, and we need better rail infrastructure. We also need it for our climate goals. You know, just as an example, the single biggest emitter of greenhouse gas emissions in Massachusetts is automobiles. 40% of greenhouse gas emissions come from transportation. The Cape is one of the most vulnerable areas of our state to climate change. Reducing congestion, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and connecting people to homes they can afford and to work that they can do is really important, because I also think if properly implemented, it's going to help with the housing crisis we've got on the Cape, because it will allow people to get back and forth more easily, be connected to more job centers.
We're going to talk about the Cape Cod bridges next, but here is one big issue with that is we have the railroad bridge that goes up and down, as you may know, which is a beautiful bridge built at the same time as the other bridges in the 30s, and it was not built to be going up and down, you know, 30 times a day.
Right.
Plus, you have the marine traffic that would have to stop, and you know we have big barges and the car carrier, cruise ships, all these that can't stop. You know, if the if the
there's
bridge
a lot
is
going
down,
on in the canal.
There's a lot going down. I can see it from my house, believe me. So that's one of our concerns. Is I'm not sure you can use the same bridge to do that. I don't oppose the rail, but I think we have to find a better way to do it. Now, the other thing is, what can you do to ensure that the new Cape Cod Canal bridges, both of which are in Bourne, can be designed and constructed with the least amount of interference to our daily lives? Because just imagine, it's going to be a mess. How involved will you be in this massive undertaking?
Yeah, I appreciate you asking that, Kathy. I plan to be very hands-on with that project. You know, just want to thank again Senator Moran, who spent a lot of time working on securing the state money for that bridge project, and I do want to applaud and thank our federal delegation, Senator Markey in particular, that worked on. The federal money is in the Biden infrastructure plan, and a transportation bond bill we did in a previous legislative session has authorized the borrowing. So at this point, the legal structure is there. Now we need to move to actually begin construction on the project. And I'll just tell you, Kathy, the point you're bringing up about the sort of mitigation, the coordination with the communities is important. I have some experience with this because I don't know if people are familiar with the Springfield area where I live, but the Interstate 91 is the core highway that goes up and down north-south along the Connecticut River. Almost everyone in the Springfield area is using that highway almost every day. And we did a major project to update what's called the viaduct, or the sort of overpass that goes through downtown Springfield. And as you can imagine, even closing or temporarily closing that highway was highly disruptive. So we worked on a traffic mitigation plan with MassDOT. We worked with city officials. We worked with regional officials and the state police to help with signage. We worked with the local business community and the local TV and media outlets on communication and PSAs to the public about what was happening. So you don't want to pretend it's not going to be disruptive. It's obviously going to be disruptive, but we need to get it done to get the bridge in good shape. The key is the planning and the communication to people so that they know when the closures are happening, when the traffic backups are most likely, and what the mitigation plan is.
Right, and even the design. The design of, I'm not talking about so much the design of the bridge, but the design of the access roads. That's going to be huge here. You know, so we need to, we have had Zoom meetings and whatever. Nothing has really happened yet. So we're still waiting with, you know, bated breath.
And, you know, just not to dwell on it, but an example of how a lieutenant governor can be helpful there is, you know, the lieutenant governor is one of the only positions, aside from the governor, of course, that can kind of work across disciplines, across agencies, right? You know, you could have the Secretary of Transportation come, but they're going to know the mass highway element. You know, you could have the you could have the mayors and the various community officials, but they can't necessarily impact the state level action. A lieutenant governor can come in and get everyone around the table. We need MassDOT here. We need the local officials. We need the chambers of commerce. We need the community groups all working together, and that's a process, you know, I'd be excited to facilitate.
Great, thank you. Now, housing on the Cape.
Yes.
Historically been difficult, but I'm not talking about can I find a summer house for the beach, you know. I'm talking about teachers and firefighters, people in the service industry, even medical people cannot find an affordable place to live. we're not going to do well if we don't have these people in our communities. What can you do about that?
This is an urgent issue, and frankly, it is threatening the way of life that we've had on the Cape for a long time. Look, it's been a vacation destination for a long time, but it's also been a year-round economy for a long time. Incredible fishing heritage, incredible agriculture. You had a manufacturing history as well. And all of that is threatened when the housing prices become completely inaccessible for people. I mean, we're at risk of turning into, Aspen or somewhere where only the absolute most wealthy people can live. And that's very dangerous. So, and I've seen a version of this in Western Mass with the Berkshires, which has had a similar challenge, a similar dynamic with their economy. So just a few things, Kathy. Transportation is a big part of it. If, for example, we get better rail service, if we get better public transit, if we are able to connect more areas of the state and more areas where there's good housing to the Cape economy, you're going to see an improvement. There's a really important link between transportation and housing. They really go hand in hand. We need to do a lot more around workforce housing and affordable housing, especially for core public servants, teachers, firefighters, police officers that help make our community run. We've got to do more on zoning, and we've got to make sure that we're zoning appropriate housing, for our workforce and for year-round people. And where appropriate, we've got to make sure that we're investing in and that we're properly pricing in the cost of all of these impacts, especially in terms of seasonal people coming in and buying properties, not living in them, but driving the price up for everybody else. The last thing I'll just say, sorry to go long, but I'm a huge booster of our tourism, arts, and culture economy. I was the chair of our Committee on Tourism, Arts, and Culture in the Senate. In Western Mass, it's very important for us, just like it is on the Cape. I think we have that in common. But we also need to be working on supporting our year-round economy on the Cape. Our fishing industry is still an important sector and employer and needs support. The advanced manufacturing sector, vocational education, closing the wait lists at Voc schools. That's part of housing policy because it provides good, high-quality incomes, to people who have grown up here and want to stay here. So it's all connected.
Great. Okay. Now, public libraries are very close to my heart. I'm the chair of the trustees of the library here in Bourne. But trying to renovate or build a library for this century is a very arduous and sometimes decades-long prospect. What can you do to help us get more funding and an easier process for our libraries?
I'm so grateful you've asked this question. Libraries are very close to my heart, too. I chair our Libraries Caucus in the Senate, which is a passion project for me because I love our libraries. And I was very involved in the construction of the East Forest Park branch library of the Springfield Library System. So from the beginning to the end, we worked on getting an entire new library built and set up. And it is very hard. You're right. So first,
there is a pot of money.
Yes.
But it's a small pot of money for a very long list. That's got to change.
Well, exactly. So you just hit the nail on the head. I could tell you know a lot about this.
Unfortunately.
So just an example. Actually, the good thing is Massachusetts is one of the only states that has a standalone program for library construction. The bad thing or the challenging thing is that the list of projects is many, many times longer than the actual support and funding allows for the pipeline. So we can, for example, help close that backlog by investing more into that program. We also need to do more around reconstruction and reimagining of existing library spaces, We've got two things we need to do. We need to build new libraries, but we also need to reimagine and renovate existing libraries. And Kathy, this is where I think there's actually a really exciting opportunity, which is if you think about it, libraries are kind of like the original co-working space,
That's right.
And we see this trend now towards remote work, towards work from home, towards co-working. And you could imagine a scenario where in all of our communities where we have these beautiful public libraries, you could reimagine the space so that people can do can do Zooms from the library, They can work part of the week from their public library. Maybe we work on putting in concession. You don't want to make it messy, but like coffee shops and other ways to kind of generate some income. you know, those are the types of operational funding that we need to work on.
When the library was closed because of the pandemic, the parking lot was full.
Yes.
Do you know why?
Wi-Fi access.
Wi-Fi
yeah.
access, right.
Oh, in Western Mass, we have this in a big, again, a lot of similarities between the Cape and Western Mass. The Library Caucus, we did a hearing with the Board of Library Commissioners. You might have been there, Kathy, actually, as I think about this. But there was a survey done, and to your point about the parking lot, you know what the single most requested item was to loan out from libraries during the pandemic?
Hotspots.
Exactly,
Yep.
yeah. Which tells a lot about
Right.
how much we need to do around broadband access.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
So, what is your stance on education? Do you support charter schools? And what would you do about this student loan debt issue? I mean, can we forgive the interest? Because I think the interest is what's the killer on the student loans.
Right. So yeah, we have two very, very important items that I'm very passionate about. So on education, we did do a significant rewrite of our education funding law with the Student Opportunity Act, but there's a lot more we need to do, I think, around voc schools, around regional school districts, which is important on the Cape, again, important in Western Mass, which I think are continually short shrift in how the funding formulas work. As for charters, I don't support expanding them. I think that they divert money away from the core public school system, and at the end of the day, a small fraction of our students go to charter schools. The vast majority of students go to public schools. So we've got to get the public schools right. So we've got to do the work and make the investments to get the public schools right. And on student loans, you know, my generation, the millennials, you know, this is a very, very big issue for us and our parents and grandparents who have often had to co-sign these horrible loans. The federal government issued those student loans to students, so the federal government does and could have the power to either cancel or excuse certain debt. And I've worked with a coalition of state legislators to push for that on a federal level. On a state level, something we can do is make crystal clear to the servicers that they have to follow the rules, they have to be responsive to people when they have concerns and questions, and they've got to do the work to adjust interest rates to make it affordable for people. And that's exactly, Kathy, what the Student Loan Borrower Bill of Rights was.
Good.
Something I worked on for 6 years with Attorney General Maura Healey that we got done and signed into law in 2021.
Wow, great. Okay. Voting rights.
Yeah.
Do you support same-day or election day registration? My concern is, are our town clerks ready for that?
Yeah. So I do support same-day registration. I've supported it in the legislature for my whole time in the Senate. We worked to try to include it in the voting reforms that we did this past session, but what we ended up doing as a compromise was having a commission to sort of study the implementation. I do think, Kathy, you bring up an important point with the clerks. You know, we have, you know, many of our clerks are one-person operations in our smaller communities. I think that's something we have to take into account and think through how we properly support them, but I think that it's possible to do that while still creating as much access to voting as we possibly can. But you're right that that's an issue that does have to be incorporated and has to be worked into any implementation.
How does same-day registration work? In other words, if I'm not registered, I go to the poll and say, I want to register, and what do they do then?
Yeah, so the idea is that you can show up on election day and you can register to vote and cast your ballot in the same day. So you would fill out your application, they'd be able to process the application, and then you could go in and vote. Many states do this.
I know.
So there's a blueprint for how to do it. Secretary of State Galvin has repeatedly said that he would be able to do it once the legislature acted. So like any policy, there's things you got to work out, right? You've got to take into consideration the implementation. We need to properly fund and support the clerks,
that's
right? Because it's in nobody's interest for somebody to show up and for the clerks to not have the support, the staff, the infrastructure they need to make it work, right? I mean, I think we all would agree with that. So I think rather than saying, oh, we can't do it because of that, the posture needs to be and the mindset needs to be, okay, well, what do we need to what do the clerks need to make it happen? And then it's the state's obligation to come in and to support that.
Is there still time to register now and change your registration if you would like.
There is.
Okay.
Yeah, August 26th, I believe, is the last day. So we're getting close to
We're
the
getting
deadline.
close, yes.
And actually, people can vote right now. They
Right,
can vote
right.
by mail right now.
Right.
An early vote will be the week before the September 6th primary, including that weekend before. So a lot of different options.
Yes. And finally, Eric, why should we vote for you?
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate the time. I appreciate you having me, Kathy. I think at the end of the day, you know, we're working to elect an executive team, right, in September, and then, of course, in the November general election. And I think the set of experiences I bring, high-level federal experience working for President Obama, the perspective of someone from Western Mass, you know, far away from the corridors of Beacon Hill, with a perspective of how our state sometimes leaves communities and regions behind. And also the experience working in the legislature on some of these really high-stakes issues and getting real things done are going to give me that, you know, important perspective, and the history of working on some really high-stakes stuff, including Narcan access, the opioid crisis, and student loan issues directly with Attorney General Healey will make me the right person to be Lieutenant Governor.
Great. Thank you so much, Eric, and best of luck in the primary, which is September 6th. Yes, the day after Labor Day. You've been watching this on Born TV. You can watch this and my other interviews on borntv.com. Please watch, meet all the candidates, then you be the judge. Go out and vote.